I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Office Hours live stream. Back for another one. Don't know how long we'll go tonight. I was going to do, well, I'll talk about that in a second, but welcome everybody first. Big Al presents. First in line this time said, love that thumbnail. Can you send it to the icon? Yeah, Al runs a page on Facebook called Iconic Universal Monsters, and does a really pretty great job with it. This image was actually just AI. I just told ChatGPT, hey, create me an image, with Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman playing video games, and it did a pretty good job. I hate AI for the use of art that people present as their art, right? Like, I could never show you this image and go, look at what I created. This is my art. No, I just typed in some parameters in ChatGPT. I didn't create this in any way, shape, or form. But I don't mind using it for like a thumbnail creation or something. I was telling Sound Engraver, I was like, even if I wasn't using an AI thumbnail, I'd be cruising through Google and just finding other people's images and copying them, pasting them into a collage. I don't present that as my art either, because I didn't create those photos or anything. So yeah, I use that. But if you want it, I'll definitely send it your way out. And it turned out pretty well, I thought. Welcome to Ghost Planet Max Inc. Eldritch fan, Nathaniel Zalozball. So the stuff you hear coming out of Dearborn is infuriating. What's Dearborn? Not familiar with that. Who else is here? Oh, Nathaniel Zalozball is talking about, love to hear me talk about atomic monsters. The Fly, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, it's I like those movies from the 50s, that kind of wave that hit in the 50s and 60s. They're not as iconic. What I'm meaning, you don't have like specific monsters showing up in other movies iconically. I mean, yeah, Godzilla is the exception to that, but the giant spiders, the giant, this or that monsters, the atomic Gila monster, and so forth, they're not showing up again and again and again. I do find them interesting. It was an interesting stage in American horror, and even British horror, but it's not, and I guess you'd have to say Japanese horror, for Godzilla and whatnot, but it doesn't quite strike me as much as the iconic monsters that really just strike such a chord. What interests me about the Atomic Age monsters, like the big atomic monsters, is the fact that they exist at all speaks to something within the human psyche and the fear. And so you can kind of lump them all together in a sense in that way. But it's different than like the very specific chord that Dracula strikes in the human psyche versus the specific chord that Frankenstein strikes in the human psyche and so forth. But maybe next year, because this year I'm kind of doing the archetypal monsters, iconic universal monsters throughout the ages, looking at their impact in culture and whatnot. And maybe next year we'll go back and fill in the gaps with some of that stuff. It'd be interesting. Imaginative Hobbyist, welcome. Crystal Ashes, good to see you there. See Ace Moic, great to see you. Eldritch fan said a goodbye gift. My Saturday obligations have shifted, so I won't be able to watch you live often. Sorry. I'll catch your streams and vids later. Oh well, I appreciate the gift there from you, Eldritch fan. Much appreciated. But never feel obligated. Always glad to have you there. But hey, life happens. You got Saturday evening things to do. Understandable. Gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, sometimes I might have my daughter and whatnot, for example, so I get it. Who else am I missing here? Private Eye and Retrospectiva, welcome. Elf Runner, good to see you. Michael Skimbody, great to see you. Leia Plus Size, good to have you here. Prof Monsters into video games, yeah. Yeah, I often thought, like, which of the iconic Universal monsters would I be? As much as I love the Wolfman, I think with all of my joint issues and whatnot, I'd probably be Frankenstein. There's a great there's a great commercial back in the 90s. Actually, these Universal stuffed monsters I've got up on my shelf back there. It was a series of these that came out in the 90s from CVS drugstores, and they sold the series. And I've got the whole lot. There's a couple more on the top shelf there you can't see. But I've got the whole collection. And the commercial of it was a CVS store, and it was a CVS employee unpacking things, putting things away and whatnot. And this mummy, comes up to him and was like, and then the guy's like, oh, bandages, all three. And then Frankenstein comes up, and he's like, pain reliever, 4. And I was like, yeah, that'd probably be Frankenstein. I walk very stiffly and whatnot. It's probably, yeah, I can't really deny that. I feel like Frankenstein when I move around. Let's see. Samuel Proctor, good to see you there. DFLS Studios, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. Appreciate that. You say, with Halloween here soon, I saw your Sabrina review. I would like to know your thoughts on Wicca in real life and in fiction. After I heard Pints with Aquinas say it's demonic from an ex-Wiccan. Yeah, I have. I'm going to broaden that to talk about witchcraft in general. It's a good question. It's a very good question. I'm going to broaden that to talk about witchcraft in general. And that certainly encapsulates Wicca and the proper Wicca religion and whatnot. But I think there are probably other people that might practice some sort of pagan witchcraft that maybe isn't technically Wiccan. I'm no expert on what is technically and what isn't technically the religion of Wicca. But I can say it's a form of paganism that I think, as a Catholic Christian, is incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. I would not want nothing to do with it whatsoever. That's not to say that people who practice the religion Wiccan are demonic people and you should stay away from them at all costs. Just like any other belief system that would come from a pagan roots or whatever. It's something to be avoided at all costs, especially from a Christian. But that doesn't make the practitioners, demonic little evil people that you should spit upon or discriminate against in any way. But no, I think the religion of Wiccan is like, talk about a portal for demonic entry into your life. big time. But see, I see real life witchcraft in terms of like the actual religion of Wiccanism and whatnot, or Wiccan, whatever the form of the word is there. That's a completely different thing than the fictionalized witchcraft you see in tales. You might have Wiccans like really enjoying these movies about witchcraft or whatever, but for the most part, like, you go see I'm blanking on the name. What was the great, wonderful movie from the 90s? Hocus Pocus. I was gonna say the Sanderson sisters. You guys would be all on top of me, but yeah, Hocus Pocus. Like those are fictional mythological witches in that movie. They're not Wiccans at all. The type of witchcraft that you would see persecuted in like ancient times, or even so as recent as like the Salem witch trials, wasn't Wiccanism. Now there are similarities, and from the Christian mindset, there are certainly some basic similarities that are lines you don't cross. Wiccans do attempt to communicate with these or that spirits and so forth. They wouldn't necessarily contextualize that as the Satan of biblical understanding that they're communicating with, but they do. That's, they do communicate with spirits and whatnot, which is just line you don't cross in Christianity. Absolutely not. So yeah, there's if there's similarities, it can kind of muddy the issue sometimes, but no, like when I enjoy a good witch movie, a Halloween witch movie where the witches are, the witchcraft is evil and whatnot or whatever. Like I said, I like Hocus Pocus, and things like that. But that's very different. Or it's important to make the distinction, I think, between that and the actual Wiccan religion, which I'm not making apologies for. I think it's like stay away big time, but it's very different. It's not. I think it does a disservice. I'll talk about that tonight actually a little bit. It's one of my topics. One of the things that I love about monster stories, whether you're dealing with vampires, witches, whatever, is that it's a recontextualization of real evil in the world. And if you have real evil or real people in the world that somehow imitate or have similarities between them and real life monsters, like there are people that would actually call themselves real life vampires as well, typically more of like a psychic vampire kind of thing or whatever. They're all kind of subcultures. That doesn't make them, we don't go stake them people through the heart. No, they're human beings. And I would very much disagree with their lifestyle. But you logically say they're not monsters. The monsters on the screen or in my stories are a recontextualization of real, true evil. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight and make some of those distinctions. But it's a good, interesting question there. Good topic, juicy one. Okay, I think I've welcomed everybody. Final Fantasy fan, did I see you? I know I said Ace Moic, Tom Spiegel, good to see you. And this Jozo's Corner. Welcome. Crystal Ashes, thank you so much for the super chat. So just want to say thank you for everything you do. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here and for supporting me. I very much appreciate it. So, yeah. All right. I think we've got got to the end here. Okay, so let me jump into that topic first then, since I already kind of broached it there with my answer to that question. I was going to do more movie reviews tonight. I just released my talk about the Curse of Frankenstein, Hammer Horror's Curse of Frankenstein. I just released that last night. That's on the channel now. Later tonight, I'm going to release my talk from last week about the horror of Dracula, Hammer Horror's first, Dracula movie. And I was kind of aiming for it tonight, but not really, because I knew it was sort of unrealistic. I'm watching / rewatching all of the Hammer, Dracula, and Frankenstein movies in order. And in this current, some of them I've watched for the first time, some of them I've just rewatched to make sure that I've got them fresh on my mind for this these reviews this season. But I'm still about I still need to watch 2 of the Hammer Frankenstein movies toward the end there, the Horror of Frankenstein and the I forget the last one's name, but the one when Peter Cushing comes back. And then there are like maybe 3 of the Dracula movies that I haven't, at the end of that chronology, that I haven't watched fully through for this rewatch, for this talking about these reviews. So I was going to think, well, I'll just talk about the rest of the sequels this time, but it's like, that's a bit of a stretch, because movies are good and long, and I don't have all the time in the world to watch movies. So I'm going to do that next week. So I thought, okay, well, what do I talk about tonight? And there are 2 topics actually that I thought about. The first one, well, they both have to do with why I'm so interested in monster movies, especially as somebody who wouldn't necessarily call himself a horror fan in general. Like, I'm not like, I just love a good slasher. I love a good horror. I love it. It's not the horror itself that I love. I love a good movie about good versus evil. And I love, as a student and an enthusiast of mythology, I love a good story that recontextualizes man's daily basic struggle against good and evil. And I think monster movies, especially the more archetypal monster movies that really rise up to the cream of the crop here, rise like cream or whatever's, mixing my metaphors. I think there's just so much in them. There's so much to dive into and talk about. And especially these days, especially in recent history here, in recent times, with all of the stuff that's been going on in the news and in the horrible world and politically motivated violence, to straight up assassination, to even just assault and bullying and all this kind of stuff. And I think it highlights even more so why monster movies are so useful, because they do recontextualize what the evil is, what the monster is. You watch a Dracula movie or a Frankenstein movie or a Wolfman movie. Wolfman's a little different because it's the duality of man, but it still makes this firm distinction even within the man. But it's the idea that the monster is other, and the monster is not human. Okay. Dracula unless you're doing a movie about his human origins and it really tries to humanize the character, and I think you can go way too far with that. Like I said, I think that what was the name of the movie that the Dracula movie that they came out with before Universal tried to like reboot it all with the Mummy? I'm forgetting the name of it, but they tried to like go and give his human, origins and all of that. It was a good movie. I think Luke Evans was in it. It was a good movie, but it was a horrible step. That's not the direction you take with Dracula. Dracula is an iconic monster. And any story about Dracula worth its salt, especially for the first Bram Stoker novel, solidly sets Dracula apart as a demonic evil, basically. I mean, it doesn't go all into the theology of that, but he's evil. Yeah, Dracula Untold was the name of the movie I was talking about there. Good movie, but just not a good take on Dracula, because you don't, even something like Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, yeah, you see him as a human being, but he also 100% totally gives himself over to the satanic power and becomes this demonic entity, so you watch movies like that and you see good human beings like the Hammer horror. I love Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. He's so great. And I've talked about that a little bit. I'll talk about it more next week. But you see the power that good has over evil, even in the overwhelming odds. You see the horror of evil, but you see that good prevails and good can prevail. And in his stories continue to go more in depth. You really see some great aspects of how good can falter, but you have to remain strong. The mistake is watching a horror or a monster movie and starting to see other people out there as Dracula, right? Other people out there as the monsters. That's a mistake. And I'm talking about elemental evil monsters like a Dracula, okay? Like I said, you can talk about it a little bit more muddy when it gets to something like the Wolfman, which is the duality of man. There are the darkness and light within us, all obviously. But this is what led to Charlie Kirk's assassination. This is what led to the let's just say it, the assassination of the I forget how many people died, and it was so many people died, even some of the detainees in the ICE facility shooting that happened in Texas this past week. The shooter, it's come out, he was wanting to punish ICE. He wanted to take out ICE operatives. He ended up shooting, I think even killing one of their detainees, which is pretty ironic, but he looked at human beings. Charlie Kirk's assassin looked at a human being and said, they are the evil. They are the monster. And that's what's so evil about it. That's what everybody with the brain has tried to denounce, is you can't look at a human being. You can think what they're doing is evil. Human beings are 100% capable of evil. Absolutely. We, especially in the Christian worldview, we're capable of falling in with evil influences. There's a very real demonic world, a very real evil influence out there that tries to pull us, and some people are far more given to it than others. You think about real individuals in human history, and most people today would say, well, Hitler, okay, he's obviously the most, if you could pick one human being who wasn't technically diagnosed, but pretty much everybody believes and thinks of is perhaps possessed in some way, I think most people would say that, because he just perpetrated so much evil and horrible suffering on people. And he's not any kind of the first of his kind. There have been plenty of these people throughout history, maybe with modern warfare and whatnot, he's the first of his kind to affect that many. But even that though, especially from a Christian worldview, you'd have to say, and this is hard for a lot of people to say, but you'd have to say, I hope he was saved in the end. I hope his humanity was saved in the end. Because if you're a Christian, and a lot of these monster movies are from a Christian worldview. I mean, how you can't follow Dracula movies, especially classic Dracula movies, and not see that. I mean, I was watching Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, for example, one of the most loaded faith-based movies out there. I mean, it's all about reclaiming faith, reclaiming the Christian faith, the Catholic faith, even, in fight against Dracula. And we're seeing, we've seen all of these attacks and the people who show up and protest. We're seeing that they looked at other human beings as vile, as monsters, they've dehumanized certain people. They've dehumanized people they don't agree with to the point where they feel it's okay to enact violence upon them. And any rational person would watch a Dracula movie and go, okay, it's one thing to be in a fictional world and put a stake through Dracula's heart. It's quite a different thing to be in the real world and shoot a political opponent in the heart or neck or whatever, and that's not a problem for people who are sane and emotionally and well adjusted and so forth. But what we're seeing is, and we can take a cue here from the Hammer Horror's Frankenstein movies that I've been talking about. Remember, I talked about last week, and if you just watched it, my review of Hammer Horror's Curse of Frankenstein, how the real monstrous one in those movies was Dr. Baron von Frankenstein. And he was defending his work. He was defending, saying, no, it's not monstrous what I'm doing. It's not monstrous. What if people could just see, if they could just get on board with what I'm doing. And that's what we're seeing from the left today. Not every person with leftist politics, of course not, but the everybody trying to say, well, the problem today is both sides. I'm interested in monsters and how they affect our culture and how they reflect our culture. And this is just something I see now. So every now and then there's somebody going, oh, I came for the story, not the politics. Well, you shouldn't have come here, because if you know me, I'm going to talk about politics if they're relevant. And we're seeing it from the left. And we hear these horrible things being said. Look, you can disagree with ICE. You can disagree with any kind of right-wing politic point made. That's fine. That's your right. You can even think that the effect of this right-wing policy or whatever is evil, but you can't call the people, human beings, evil, and then tell me that you're not radicalizing and you're not contributing to the rhetoric that's going to go enact violence upon them at some point. That's just what happens. You can't call somebody a Nazi and a fascist and a threat to our democracy and all of this hyperbole. They're not meaning it as hyperbole. They truly do mean it. See, that's the thing. Growing up, you'd always hear somebody occasionally refer or link this political opponent or whatever to, oh, there's Hitler or whatever, It wasn't until Trump came about, because you saw that a lot during the W. Bush years too. But it wasn't until Trump came about in his first presidency, his first campaign running for it, that people really, truly doubled down on this. And they really started to believe it themselves. How can you see that that's not going to create the world we have today, where there are radicalized individuals, especially young people? That's mostly who we see, these young, impressionable individuals, oftentimes, coming out of the academic machine, but at least coming from the media machine of left is good, right is evil, fight evil at all costs, that kind of programming. How can you see that and not see that that's the side that's creating this evil in the world, creating this murdering of political opponents in the world? Every person I talk to that tries to say, well, it's both sides, bring the receipts. Hillary Clinton was on, I think, the Morning Joe the other day on MSNBC, and she was saying, we need to bring down the rhetoric, and what we're seeing right now is mostly from the right. Where is it? Where is it? Now, you can find some stupid, racist, evil right-winger, of course. I mean, evil people, not evil people, but evil exists on all kinds of spectrums, right? There are all types of people from different political persuasions. So, yeah, I'm not saying that you'll never find a person of right-wing politics who would ever do this or say this or think that. Of course. But where's the, I can point to Charlie Kirk's assassin. I can point to the ICE shooting. I can point to the protests. I can point to the assaults. Like, I can give you links to actual news stories. Where are the receipts? If you say it's both sides, where are the receipts? Where's the right-wing perpetrators of this? And the left just has nothing to tell you. They'll try it out and they'll say, well, January 6th. Okay, first of all, January 6th is a highly dubious situation as to what motivated that and who came about it. But let's just say, for example, for the sake of argument, that it was 100% the right-wing evil that perpetrated that or whatever. That's like, what, 5-6 years ago? That you can't really lump that in with the political violence that's happening all in one season here. People will say, well, what about the Democratic representatives from, was it Minnesota or Michigan? I get the two states mixed up, the MIs. But what about them? What about them? Yeah, okay, well, what about them? Let's look into it. These were two Democratic state representatives, and they were assassinated, basically. Okay. So you might think, and that's all the media will tell you. That's all the news will tell you. Well, they were, look at these Democrats who were assassinated too. See, so it's both sides. It's both sides. Oh, well, hold up, hold up. Let's do a little deep dive into that story. Those two Democratic representatives that were assassinated were under heavy controversy at the time because they had recently compromised with the Republicans on a bill. Forget the details of the actual bill, but you can find it. They had recently compromised with Republicans in the state house there, and they were coming under heavy criticism for it. And then they're murdered, and the murderer in his car was found all of these flyers for the No Kings protest. Remember the No Kings protest against Trump? So stop it. Stop trying to sway the story or just give us a little bit of the story. The other example I hear is, well, Trump's administration, they are repressing all of the right-wing attacks. They're suppressing that so you can't hear it. They're suppressing is the word. They're suppressing that so you can't hear those. They're not letting that information get out. You really believe that? In today's world, with everybody's cell phone, with the media, which is 99%, 100% leftist media, you really think that the Trump administration would be able to quash all reporting of the rampant right-wing crime that's being perpetrated? No, come on. But you'll believe it if it helps you keep to the narrative that you've built your identity around, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this monstrous othering of people, dehumanizing of people into monsters, and you can't do that. And I'll say this, I'm starting to see it, and this is dangerous. I'm starting to see it as a response from a lot of people on the right. And this is not cool. Sound Engraver was watching Andrew Klavan the other day. And the guy from what's it, Newswire or whatever, I can't remember the name of the program there, but he was talking about how he's not going to be satisfied until he sees Charlie Kirk's assassin dead. He's not going to be satisfied until he sees him dead. He wants him executed for his crimes. That's not a Christian way to look at it. I'm seeing people go, oh, and they're so mad. And hey, it's normal to have this visceral emotion, this visceral emotional reaction as a human being. I want the hey, Utah you can still die by firing squad there. We should push for this. That's not, you're doing the exact same thing to this young man that the left was doing to Charlie Kirk. It still is doing to Charlie Kirk. You're just proving that people who engage in that, they're so angry they can't check themselves. They are being exactly what the left wants them to be, and that's not how you go about this. That stuff works in monster movies. That stuff works in monster movies where the evil is archetypal, it's symbolic, and you can slay. In the real world, we're all human beings, and especially if you're a Christian, especially if you want to work from the Christian worldview, you work for the salvation of all. Would Charlie Kirk have wanted his assassin executed at all costs? No, he'd want him saved at all costs. And putting him in the ground, it nixes any idea that that's going to be a possibility in the future. And it's weird too how people have this this fixation on the death penalty as though death is the ultimate thing that one can suffer in that situation. It's really not. I mean, I would never do anything that would, merit me the death penalty. But let's just say I was facing death row. I've always thought about this. I would want the death penalty in a heartbeat versus life in prison. I can't imagine you're never going to get out. That's your life. The abuse, the assaults, the horror of prison life. That's your life. And people think that the death penalty is worse than that. Maybe that's just me. I've just always thought that's kind of that doesn't really follow in my mind. But the point is, monsters help us recontextualize evil into a symbolic, fictional being. We can't look in real life for our Draculas and other human beings, right? The Dracula in real life are the evil forces that influence other human beings. And you should be trying to save them from that. Be the Van Helsing that's trying to give them blood transfusions and so forth, metaphorically, obviously. That's what these stories do for us. Yeah, it's not I don't know. I mean, I've just already said what I can say. I don't know if I can say any more plainly than that, but that's the problem. We're seeing a lot of people delve into that. I do have another angle or another wing of this to talk on what monsters do for our culture here that I'll talk about in a second. But I got some super chats here, and I just wanted to say that first. So I got 2 super chats, I think. Nope, 3 super chats. Hashir the gamer says, "Hi, Prof. I really appreciate your archetype vids." Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy them. Are you a channel member? Because you my archetype vids right now are for channel members, like the archetype vids with the visuals and images and everything. But good to see you there. Thanks for the chat. I appreciate it. Alec Purdue says, how would monster stories hold up in light of post World War II consensus as described by Jonathan Pageau? I'd have to hear his post World War II consensus. I really like Jonathan Pageau. I don't listen to him religiously, or I can't quote his views on everything or whatever by name. So I'd have to hear the specifics of what you're talking about there. But I do enjoy him. I think he's a very intelligent dude. I don't always agree with everything he says. His I think some of his views on what some of this symbolism means is amazing. Some of it I would diverge on, but yeah, I don't know of the specifics of everything there. Only receipt is Richard Spencer at best. You have to go through every example they try to give you. You have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to go research it on your own. What I really recommend is, and I learned this from a YouTuber out there called Devory Darkins, and he's a great political commentator, because the free media that our founding fathers advocated for simply isn't there anymore. It's not your news outlets, your media, your newspapers, your news websites, your TV channels. That's just simply not the free media that was supported by our founding fathers. It's not. That's 100% propaganda now. That's either in some cases it's kind of connected and part of a conspiracy to get these political ideas out. And in other places, it's just these people who have been so conditioned and propagandized from their academia that they come out like this, and they're not about giving you information. They're not about trying to make the public well informed. They're about swaying the public. That's what they want to do. They want to sway the public politically, and that's just the case. So the closest thing I think you have to what the free media that the founding fathers advocated for would be the YouTube commentators. And I'm not saying this is exactly it and this is the thing, but I'm saying it's the closest thing I can think of. And I listened to this guy Devory Darkins, who's a great source for me, but I think he's sponsored by, but he talks about a lot, and he uses for his commentary this website called Ground News. And I've looked at it, and it's actually really, really useful. And it takes anytime any news story that you look at, it'll show you what the liberal media outlets are saying about it and what the conservative media outlets are saying about it. It'll show you which side is covering what and what side is avoiding covering what. It'll tell you how it's showing you. It's not just telling you. It's showing you how these websites and this leftist media is portraying this event, and how this rights media is portraying this event. And it goes through, and then you can kind of read between the lines for yourself until you see what's really going on there. It's a shame that you have to do that, but that's just the case. That's just the nature of it now. There's no such thing as the free media. The press is not, they're not some vaunted romanticized. No, the media is the enemy. They are 100% trying to control and manipulate and distort the facts and the stories, not give you actual news and what's going on. So anybody who just hears a news story, and just believes it, it's like we're well past that. You gotta dig in and really see what's going on. Hashir said, just want to ask, what is the best order to read Gothic literature? Ooh, that's a big question there. I mean, Gothic literature is such a huge genre that if you're really just trying to get like a sort of a survey knowledge of Gothic lit, I mean, you could start with the old Gothic lit like Castle of Otranto, Matthew Lewis's The Monk. You can do some Anne Radcliffe, but she's a very specific type of Gothic literature where she doesn't like actual supernatural in the story. You can find out in the end that, see, he fooled you. It was really this or that, pulling the strings behind the curtains or whatever. But you can start with old Gothic lit like that, and then you can certainly get into Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, American Gothic stuff with Edgar Allan Poe, wonderful, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and yeah, you can kind of go in the order of the chronology of it, and then in doing that, it's kind of like how a survey course would be taught. And in doing that, you see how it's affected culture and how it's evolved with culture and so forth. to the point where you get to something like William Faulkner's The American Gothic, like A Rose for Emily or something like that, where you got these old houses that are kind of part of it instead of the castles. And on the countryside in Europe, you've got these old aristocratic houses, in the South or something like that in American Gothic, and it's fun to watch the whole uh, evolution of it. All right, let me go over this last quote here, or this other thing. I've been reading this book, um, The Monster Show by David J. Skal. David J. Skal is a film historian. He's written a great book on Dracula and the history of the making of the movie of Dracula. He's written a bunch of stuff. He's frequently a commentator on the special features for a lot of these classic monster movie DVDs. And he's even hosted some documentaries. If you looked up his name, you'd probably recognize his face if you watch a lot of that kind of stuff like I do. But this movie's a great, this book is great. It's called The Monster Show, A Cultural History of Horror. And it's really going through and doing exactly what I'm interested in. It's just talking about the cultural impact and how it's evolved and changed with the different monster stories that we have. And it opens up, I've got my place marked here. It opens up talking about the old freak shows, the carnival sideshows and whatnot. And I didn't know this, but Todd Browning, of course, we talk about him a lot in the context of being the director of Dracula. Before that, he was the iconic director of all the Lon Chaney senior films, Hunchback and the Phantom of the Opera and whatnot. But he himself was a sideshow performer. I didn't know that. And he did all kind of sideshow performances. He was even one of the ones who would get buried alive for a day or two. And he'd just have his like little slot for ventilation in the coffin and then have his snacks, his milk duds in there or whatever, and he would just hang out there until he emerges the next day or the next day or two or whatever. It's crazy. But we're talking about like the freak culture that was in our country before film came about and became where we put the freaks on the screen, quite literally in Todd Browning's case with his movie Freaks. And I'm using that word freak kind of historically, not as a derogatory term, but he makes a really interesting point here when he's talking about that kind of thing, the carnivals and the freak shows and whatnot. And I'm just going to read this paragraph because I think there's so much here and we'll kind of unpack it and talk about it as we go. But he says, popular amusements have a flip side that is often less than sunny. And the very word recreation has some usually overlooked connotations. Any process of recreation, right? That's where the word recreation comes from. It's a recreation. Any process of recreation or recreation, rebirth, necessarily entails a death of one sort or another, right? You can't be recreated if you haven't died first, right? And metaphorically, we're trying to think about this in terms of what we would call recreation, in terms of just relaxing, just going, because that word recreation has the connotation of rejuvenation, right? If you go on a nice vacation and it was good recreation and you just come back, the idea is you're rejuvenated, you're recreated, ready to go forth. But think about what the word means. It means there's necessarily some sort of death that happens first. He says, this may explain the prevalence of sugar-coated intimations of mortality in carnivals and fun parks, spook shows, wild rides involving heart-stopping plunges and near collisions, and the omnipresent, endlessly cycling wheels and whirligigs of chance, fate, and destiny. Freak shows similarly offer a glimpse of ourselves, recreated along strange physical or behavioral lines. Nothing is fixed and everything is possible. And we can say freak shows, but we can also just say movies, our monster movies in particular, movies about the strange and the freakish or whatever. And it's showing humanity, something we recognize, against something warped, askew, different. There's an uncanniness there. And it's amplified all the more. I mean, it was done up in the drama of freak shows as well. I mean, you might have a real human being with a condition that makes them this or that, a pinhead, say, what they used to be called in carnival times or whatever, or something like that. That's a human being with a medical condition, but the way it's presented in the carnival sideshow was, this, freak of nature, this otherworldly kind of being or whatever, and that's what we see in film as well. We see, with the tricks of modern day filmmaking, we see something that looks human, but is actually a wolf, a werewolf or something. And I think it's interesting that there's always that element of mortality in our recreation. And you think about it, we all understand that as fans of movies and video games and things like that. Even really giving yourself over to music, there's a moment of you just kind of lose yourself in it. That's the fun of these things. When you get into a hobby, you get into a franchise or whatever, you just so completely lose yourself in it, and that's the fun of it. You get to the point where the world of this video game or this series of books or these movies or whatever, and it's fun for you. It's a lot more fun than living in the real world for a while. Now you can take that to an unhealthy point, obviously, and neglect real world responsibilities or actual reality. But in a perfect world, it's supposed to be a place where it's recreation. You're sort of recreated in that world because you're rejuvenated. Your brain's had some time to rest. There was a German philosopher by the name of Schiller who talks about a principle he called Spieltrieb. And there's a lot to that. I'm just brushing the surface of it here because it kind of relates to what I'm saying, but you could get, somebody to really, you could do a deep dive on that and find out really what he's talking about. But the idea of Spieltrieb was that we are at our most human when we are at play, because we are at 100% what we would want to do. Everything that we do when we play is what we are fighting for to do when we're trying to survive. So as we're trying to perpetrate our DNA or trying to eat and trying to make sure that we've got work, so we've got our expenses covered. These are things we kind of have to do or we're biologically impaired to do. But what does our soul want to do? You see that when we are at play or we are at recreation or something like that. And I think that plays into this a little bit. And I mean, this is what people who are drug addicts or sex addicts or are thrill junkies, like extreme sports thrill junkies, really people who are super into CrossFit, or whatever. They're chasing this ecstasy. And what I mean by ecstasy is the word means it comes from the Latin ex stasis, which means being outside of oneself. That's what the fun of these kinds of things are. That's why people, when they go out dancing and they're really into clubbing or whatever, and because when they're out with a bunch of other people, and that beats taking over their body or whatever, they kind of leave their bodies, so to speak, metaphorically. And that's what drugs do for you, right? That's what any kind of good recreation does for you. And you can take it to a very unhealthy point, obviously. but recreation in general is just a little bit of that, just to help you kind of, recreate yourself. Like, I talk about my daughter loves roller coasters. I love taking her to amusement parks, and yeah, the more thrilling, the better. She loves it. She can't. Now, some of it is because of her. It's a vestibular stimulation with her brain, the way her autism works too. With spinning around and around is kind of a help for her sensory processing disorder and how she handles things like that. But in general, yeah, the more of the thrill, the more of the let's shake things up a little bit. Let's go over this loop, or let's go down this hill, and let's in terms of roller coasters and really feel like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have survived that. It's a little bit of a recreation. And I think that's what monster movies, more than any other type of film, I would argue. And you can certainly see this in all kinds of other type of film, anything that's a good escapism. But I think monster movies really, and horror movies in general, really do embody that, because that's the fear. It's the threat of death. It's the threat of not only death, but depending on the movie, a violent death. Or even if not death, a horrid, painful moment or whatever, which really does put into sharp focus your existence and, life and death and what's important and what's not important. And these are all the things that can get a little out of focus as we go through our daily lives and our daily responsibilities. That's what good recreation is for. That's what good monster movies are for. It's the other aspect of that I wanted to talk about. So I don't know. I love that. I love that quote. I thought it was really interesting. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Honestly, I'm still kind of mulling it over. Like, I think I could really think through it even more so, and even like write up a paper or do a whole YouTube video on it or something, but it's just something that struck me as really interesting. I wanted to share here a little bit as we chatted and talked on the stream. All right. That is basically all I've got for you tonight. Like I said, I could talk about some of the sequel, Hammer Horror sequel movies, but I really want to have them all together because I want to do a stream where I can just say, okay, now this movie, all right, let's talk about Revenge of Frankenstein. This is what, was interesting about that. I want to kind of do it in line like that and cover them all. And then we can move on to another step in the evolution. But I do think it was good last week that I gave both Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula their own specific, videos. And like I said, I just dropped the Curse of Frankenstein video. Tonight I'll drop the Horror of Dracula video that came from last week's stream. But we'll have more of that next week, definitely. So, yeah. Let me see what you guys were saying about the whole escapism thing. You guys are chatting amongst yourselves about a lot of things. Yeah, actually, you guys are just having a great conversation. Good. Like to see those robust conversations. Lemon Punch says, "Hey man, what's up with the academia subject? It's dreadful. Trying to keep my politics hidden around people who will hate me if I talk. Some people on my campus try to slyly justify Kirk's death. Oh, it's vile. It's horrible what people are doing. The way they seek to dehumanize anybody who disagrees with them, to the point of it's okay if you die or not, or you should die. I mean, these are the people that are trying to proclaim compassion and tolerance, and unless you disagree with, if you disagree with them, you don't get any of that from them. And that's the real measure. That's the real measure of how human, how compassionate you are. Are you willing to love your enemy? You know, and that's why I really caution people who react to whether it's the Charlie Kirk assassination or any of the other, the ICE assassinations and ICE targeting at the facilities there, anything like that. Look, you can be 100% against what ICE is doing. You can be politically against it. You can think it's horrible. And you can really lose yourself in a lot of the rhetoric that media outlets are going to push. How dare, listen to Gavin Newsom, for example, rip away people from their families. And what is that rhetoric doing? This is a political issue. This isn't a gang on the street deciding to break apart families and rip this person away and send this person. This isn't some gang on the street. This is a product of the laws in our country. So if you want to change that, then you need to work politically to change that in our country. You don't go change that with a gun at an ICE facility. No, you don't. And the notion and the people like Newsom and Jasmine Crockett and all these people who are just, ramping up this rhetoric, no matter what, it's the right are the evil one. You might as well be pulling the trigger the next time this happens. And people just can't see it to save their lives. And it has nothing to do with the politics of it. It's a simple principle. You can't program the public into dehumanizing a political viewpoint. And we're seeing, and academia has done it for decades now. And you're absolutely right. I feel your pain. I've been there. I am there myself at many times in faculty meetings and whatnot still. They don't get to do that. We need to keep calling them out for it. But it's all in how we call them out. If you call them out spitting the same vitriol that they spit at you, well, then you don't have a point anymore. If you continue to be like Charlie Kirk, stand up and say, no, I'm not going to be silent. And we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to show you why what you're doing to me is terrible. And they hate that. They hate that because they'll try to still label you monster, Nazi, fascist, whatever, but they can't. That voice is going to be heard. People are going to see it, and that's what they hate so much. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. AL, yeah, said, I still remember your book study on Something Wicked This Way Comes. Best story with a freak show in it. Amen. Oh man, that book was so good. The movie's good too. Not as good as the book though. But yeah, I'm not reading it this year because I read it the last 2 Halloweens in a row. And I want to try to preserve the freshness of it for me every year when I come back to it. It's the same reason that I don't read Dracula every year. It's one of my favorite novels. That and Something Wicked This Way Comes. Those are 2 of my top 5 favorite novels of all time. But I don't want to read them too often every year, like 2 consecutively, because then I'll start to like, oh yeah, that's stale to me, or I know what's happening. But they're so good that coming back to them every couple of years, every 2 to 3 years, is just it still easily impresses me and takes me away with all that great stuff. Yes, always stand for the truth. I agree. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it now. We're at like 51 minutes, 52 minutes or whatever, so almost to my hour anyway. But next time we'll talk a lot longer when we go through the Hammer horror sequels and whatnot. Hope you guys are enjoying the spooky season. I certainly am. Just took my daughter to a Halloween event last night at an amusement park that was a lot of fun. She loved it. We went to a show that they were doing, like a musical show, Halloween themed musical show that they were doing, and they were all these skeletons coming out of these like beds on stage and whatnot, and they were singing a lot of the pop songs and whatnot, and they were like the skeletons in the closet that come out at night and sing all these songs and whatnot. And they opened with "Welcome to My Nightmare" by Alice Cooper. And Alyssa heard it. She heard the music and she got all excited because she knows that song because I play it on bass or I listen to it in the car. And she starts stemming, doing this. She's like, "Get a picture of me with Alice Cooper. Get a picture of me." And so I got a little video of that. And then they were playing Enter Sandman, and she was all excited about that and stuff. So it was fun. We're having a blast. Hopefully you are too. And I'm loving watching these monster movies. They're so great. I'm just enjoying the deep dive study, enjoying and they don't get a lot of views. I don't care. I'm doing it because I love it. That's how I approach my channel all the time. I do my YouTube channel because it's something interesting and fun for me to do. I can't imagine trying to run this channel to get clicks all the time. If you ever see me do a YouTube video where I'm in the thumbnail going, just unsubscribe from me right away. That means I have totally sold out. The closest I ever came to that was when I was doing car videos. I would freeze frame a shot from the video and just, put my title over that. It was like, well, that's it's useful, whatever. But I just hate the little things that YouTubers do, which in my mind just sells out. Like they lose credibility for me because it's telling me that they're here to make money, not here to be true to who they are, to have integrity, to talk about their values or whatever. Even in religious, a lot of the religious channels I follow, I was telling Soundagray, I'll go ahead and call him out because I love and respect Trent Horn. He's an apologist. He's so great. Read his books, really enjoy his work, but he started doing that on his thumbnails. He's like, and stuff. I was like, come on, man. It just hurts my ability to take you seriously when you do stuff like that. Or when they say this, YouTube videos say this, they go, guys, YouTube's algorithm is telling me that only 10% or 90% of viewers on my channel aren't even subscribed. You need to click that bell and like and subscribe. Oh my gosh, shut up. You're just saying these little trite scripts to try to, manipulate people into giving you what you want or, making your channel more successful, and just stop. I mean, if you want people to subscribe, just ask them sincerely. Say, hey guys, it would really help me out if you subscribe. Like my Outnauts channel, the Outnauts. I ask you guys all the time. I'm trying to work that channel up and work up, the band project with it. So I'll just genuinely ask people, hey, go subscribe. It'll help me out, But there's no manipulation behind it, Anyway, that's another diatribe I'll get off of. I'm going to go ahead and stop now. Hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves. Hopefully you have a great week ahead. But yeah, this is Dreamer. Okay, yeah. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the True Blue monster stories you love, and I'll talk to you then.